Chromebooks are some of the most cost-effective and useful laptops out there. I know people like to hate on them, but honestly, if you're in college or most of your work consists of cloud-based tasks, you really don't need a monster laptop with the latest GPU in it. Some people even prefer a lighter and more nimble laptop. The one thing Chromebooks haven't got the best reputation for, however, is their performance while gaming. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's pretty tough to play any somewhat demanding game on a Chromebook, but it can be done in some cases. And I will say these things keep getting better and better, so who knows, maybe they'll be great at gaming one day. But for now, it's sorta hard to play games on a Chromebook. But we did do some research and found 10 games that you can actually play and enjoy on your Chromebook. Poly Bridge 3 is such a good game and a great way to kick off this list. Not only is this game amazing in general, the game runs great on most Chromebooks. I love the overall vibe of the game, definitely one of those games you can sit back and chill while playing. Just a brief summary about the game, Poly Bridge 3 is a puzzle game where your goal is to essentially engineer a way for cars to cross various bridges. I know at first it sounds super boring, but trust me, it's not, and you can really get invested in the game and spend hours and hours and hours playing it. The bridge designs can get pretty elaborate, and Steam even has a workshop where you can try other people's bridges or share your own. It's kind of crazy to think how a game about making bridges can be so fun. It's a great game to have on your Chromebook. Crusader Kings 2 is a strategy game set in the Dark Ages where your goal is to expand your land, keep your people alive and thriving, and, depending on the mode, defend against other online players. Oh, and a big bonus on this one is that it's free. Think Risk, but a bit more complicated, but not as complicated as something like Hearts of Iron though. So, a happy medium. The game runs great on most Chromebooks too, luckily it isn't all too demanding. As far as the gameplay, if you're into strategy games, it's a great game and the setting is awesome. If you don't like strategy games though, it really isn't going to be your thing. Anyway, it's a solid choice and definitely worth getting for your Chromebook. Speaking of strategy games, we got Risk on here too. I'm a huge Risk fan, and it's more likely I'd play something like Risk over some of the more complicated strategy games. Risk is super fun though, especially with friends. If you can get past some of the annoyances with the microtransactions, this game can accumulate hours and hours of gameplay. I'm sure everyone knows what Risk is, but just in case, for someone out there who doesn't, Risk is a strategy game in which the players start with land and points. You then use those points and land to try and expand and take on neighboring land. The person with the most land in the end wins. Definitely not a game you'll be strategizing too deeply about, but I mean, sometimes it does pay off to plan out your path forward and kind of build a game plan. It's fun, runs well on Chromebooks, and worth having and trying out. Stumble Guys is basically Fall Guys, but kind of different. It's actually solid though. Like, many of the Fall Guys copies aren't all that great, but this one holds its own. If you aren't aware of Fall Guys or don't know what that game is all about, basically up to 32 players race to the finish line while jumping and navigating through various obstacles. And Stumble Guys is basically the same thing. I think this one has some other game modes too. It kind of reminds me of a mix between Fall Guys and Roblox in a way. It's really fun though, and it's really easy to run, so it'll likely be good to go on most Chromebooks. Oh, and the player count is still strong. There are still a good number of people actively playing the game, so you shouldn't have trouble finding a lobby. Definitely a great little mini-game title for your Chromebook. A lot of people say Starbound is basically space Terraria. In some ways it's true, but in a lot of ways it isn't. Starbound is very much its own game, with its own story, bosses, and really overall feel. Basically, you explore the universe, all types of different planets. You can customize your ship and make it massive. The game itself is huge. You can easily pour hundreds of hours into this game exploring planets. The storyline is also pretty cool too, and it's a bit more involved than something like Terraria, in my opinion. I think this game is best when played with friends though, so definitely keep that in mind. It's a classic in my book and really worth trying out if you haven't already. Factorio is a 2D game where your goal is to build automated systems and defend off creatures. That's an extremely dumbed down explanation of the game. In actuality, this game is insanely complex. If you just browse the Steam reviews, you'll see people with hundreds and thousands of hours in the game, and even they are still finding and learning stuff. I think Factorio is really a certain type of gamer's game, the type of gamer who enjoys games for hundreds and thousands of hours and is willing to put in the time to learn the mechanics of that given game. This isn't for the person who likes to load into a COD match, play around, and call it a day. This game takes time and investment, but the payoff is satisfying. It kind of reminds me of Satisfactory in some respects. It's not for everyone, but if this piqued your interest, then you'll probably end up really liking this game, and it's worth looking into for sure. Necesse is another game that sort of reminds me of Terraria in some ways. I don't try and compare every 2D game to Terraria, but sometimes it's hard not to. Much of the basic elements are similar though. Exploring, building a base, mining, beating bosses, all that stuff is in here, but they do it in their own way. I think one of the biggest differences though is that in Terraria you kind of just build a base, but in Necesse you really build a settlement with roads and a whole system. It's more of a community. Oh, something else that's cool is that you can trade with neighboring settlements. So yeah, it's got unique things to it, but many people sort of just call it a top-down Terraria with differences. It's worth playing though, it's got great reviews, and it's fun to play, so be sure to check this one out. Rimworld is actually insane. The game is so complex and in-depth with all the systems it has built in, yet it's still fun for people who are just getting into it and learning. It blends gameplay experience and advanced gameplay mechanics perfectly, which is probably why it has an overwhelmingly positive review status on Steam. In short, Rimworld is a sci-fi colony sim that does something really unique and has an AI storyteller that develops your games custom to you. So unlike other colony sims, the NPCs have names, stories, relations, and so much more. Then your world lore is a whole other thing that this game does so well. It's just mind-blowing. You can also customize things to a ridiculous extent, especially with mods. So you can customize the basics like your base layout down to the NPC's backstory, appearance, just all types of stuff. It's hard for me to even try to cover what this game does, but honestly, just look into it. It's a great game and runs pretty decently on Chromebooks. Hades is regarded as being one of the greatest roguelikes of all time, and for good reason. The game is incredible. The story, the animation, the gameplay, the lore, everything is just so unique, and you can tell the developers were passionate about this project. Hades 2 is out now as well, and I've seen nothing but praise for that title too. The first Hades game has you playing as the prince of the underworld and you're trying to escape. You fight all sorts of creatures and beings and entities. It's some of the most unique fighting scenarios I've ever seen. Oh, and the voice acting and music are just top tier here. I can't praise this game enough. It's hard to know where to even begin. Basically what I'm saying is that it's an amazing game, worth your money, and great for your Chromebook. I'm sure you all saw this coming. Terraria is god tier in terms of games. This game is just so iconic. I grew up playing this game and I feel it's been so consistent with updates that it never really fell off. You can't really say anything wrong about Terraria. The building, the mining, the exploration, and of course, the bosses are all incredible. So many other games try to replicate Terraria and fail because the bar is set so high with this game. The developers love the game and it shows with their constant updates. If you haven't played Terraria yet, you need to. Grab some friends or play it alone. It's a game you need to play. It's also super easy to run, which is why it's great for Chromebook too. Amazing game, 10 out of 10, and if you don't own it already, you need to get this game. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this video. We hope you enjoyed this list and found it helpful. If you like this video and want to see more like it, consider subscribing to the channel for future videos. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you in the next video.